Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. I'd like to welcome each of you to another exciting episode of GST Presents Top Global Startups, where I bring you the innovators, founders, and thought leaders shaping the future of technology and business. Today, I'm going to be diving into one of the most important challenges facing organizations in the age of artificial intelligence: why so many AI initiatives never make it beyond the pilot phase. While billions of dollars are being invested into AI, the reality is that many organizations struggle to move from experimentation to measurable business impact. The technology often works, but the organization doesn't. Processes, culture, leadership alignment, governance, and change management frequently become the hidden barriers that prevent AI from reaching production and delivering the real value. Joining me today is someone who has spent years studying and solving this exact problem. My guest today is Angel Horvat, founder and CEO of AI Readi, a platform dedicated to helping businesses bridge the gap between AI ambition and AI execution. Before founding AI Readi, Angel served as director of data strategy for EMEA at Nike and previously worked as an associate director at Gartner, where he launched and led the AI and machine learning consulting practice. Through years of advising enterprises on digital transformation and AI adoption, he recognized a recurring pattern. AI doesn't fail because of algorithms. It fails because organizations are prepared to operationalize it. Today, we'll explore why AI projects stall, what separates successful AI transformation from expensive experimentation, and how leaders can build organizations that are truly AI ready. For that, I'd like to bring Angel on board. Hi, Angel.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Excited to have this conversation with you.
So, Angel, you had a front row seat to AI adoption challenges, both Gartner and Nike. What was the defining moment that convinced you AI adoption is fundamentally an organizational problem rather than a technology problem?
Well, I think my first experience with this was not necessarily with AI, but long before with technologies like cloud or any other BI technologies. And every time I saw exciting demos from vendors, and then a lot of people getting around the table, making decisions, and then seeing these demos work in a pilot stage, but then never really managing to get anything done in the real world, always stalling at some analyst level or some system level, or and every time costing millions and millions of dollars to fix and adopt. So I think I've seen this many times before AI, but with AI, I think the first time I saw it was sometime in 2018 when a bank was trying to operationalize a better scoring system, and it worked so well on their cloud infrastructure, but none of the tellers wanted to use it. And they were trying to implement explainability and basically all the processes around it to actually make it work. And once they done that, they took it to the regulator said, nope, this ain't happening. And by knowing what are the struggles or challenges in the organization, all that effort could have been avoided and could have started from a different place where basically how do you lobby the compliance officer or the regulator to basically change the way things are done. So I think that was my first eye opener because it obviously cost a lot of time and money for everybody involved.
What patterns did you repeatedly observe among companies that were investing heavily in AI but seeing very little business impact?
Um, for the ones that I saw, the biggest gap between investment and impact, I think a lot of the initiatives in large organizations, especially, tended to be led by technology or business, and they were all exciting and they kind of all worked, and everybody approached the same way. Let's do a pilot, try to see if this works, etc. It always kind of worked in the pilot, but then when other people need to be brought on board, it got stuck, it didn't work, or maybe it got to production or a form of production or scaled down production and it didn't work there. So basically there was a lot of exciting things, but none of them could actually go beyond just that pilot stage. I think that's the most frequent, like led by a single unit and never really getting everybody on board from the get-go.
What inspired you to build AI Ready, and what gap did you see in the market that nobody else was addressing?
Since my start in consulting, I've had this nagging feeling that, or a nagging experience where basically always was being told that I need to make decisions or people need to make decisions with incomplete information or incomplete data. And while I couldn't really do anything about it, I kind of agreed and moved on. But that I've always seen that doesn't really lead to the best outcomes, and you never really have the time, the resources, etc., to actually complete that information gap. So after seeing 10 years of this same information gap, I decided to start AI Ready, and wanted to take a different approach than traditional ways of doing things. So I actually looked into science, into information theory, neurobiology, as well as mostly neurobiology and complexity theory. So basically, my goal with AI Ready is to actually annotate the institutional knowledge into an organizational digital nervous system in order to fill this information gap, to basically drive better decision making when it comes to AI adoption and transformation.
When you look at the industry reports, Angel, suggest that the majority of AI pilots never truly reach production. Why does this happen consistently across industries?
The way I see it and the way AI Ready is anchored is that there's a disconnect between what business wants to achieve, what AI and technology can deliver, and what the organization can operate effectively. The reality is that most of the time you can get two on the same page, but rarely do you have the resources and time and planning to get all three aligned. So business and tech are aligned, but then operations needs to operate the business, run the business. They don't really have time to figure out how all the processes need to change for this new thing to shift completely how you're doing things. So I think this is the breakdown that happens most frequently. And there really isn't a way to do the planning up front, because planning is very costly. And you need to get involved, everybody that actually has a detailed understanding of the organization, into the process in order to make these new changes with AI stick.
When a CEO tells you, Angel, we've invested in AI but aren't seeing results, what are the first warning signs that you're looking for?
How have they invested in AI, and how initiatives were decided upon? Was it vendor-led? Was it leadership-led? Or did people from across the organization say, like, these are all the problems, agree on what the problems are? Can these problems be solved with AI? What type of AI will solve these problems? And then look for the AI solution that fit those problems, what people are prepared to adopt, right? Like, people are don't really like to do things that they haven't agreed to do. So I think a lot of AI failure comes from something is imposed upon people, and those initiatives tend to fail.
What do you think the biggest misconceptions executives have about what it takes to successfully deploy AI across an organization?
Well, I think these days there aren't a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of people understand what's happening. I guess a lot of organizations or leaders don't think that it's going to be them that suffer the same fate as others, which is we will not be we are not adopting AI into the organizational challenges, but we know better. We will involve everybody, and again, the same things happen, and that's because of what I mentioned earlier, which is basically there's rarely enough resources to bring everybody on board and to plan everything ahead. So basically, everybody like they see the same fate ultimately in the end.
How can you share an example where the technology was sound but organizational resistance? I see that a lot, right? You got organizations that don't want to do it for all kinds of different reasons, but that organizational resistance prevented success.
Um, Avoiding to go into specific details, I think my experiences with this is before AI, but I think because it's simpler, AI makes it even a larger challenges with BI. All the organizations that I've worked in had incredible budgets and effort behind BI in order to improve the business intelligence and decision making with data driven decisions. And there was a lot of effort to push dashboards, notifications, meetings, etc. But basically, very few people in the organization actually cared about that data, agreed with that data, understood that data, or and to be honest, in my case, most places said that the data that's been put there is not the data that how they look at the data. So there wasn't really the same language. And with AI, I think this is a magnitude higher and difficulty because people that don't want to adopt AI don't trust AI. So there's very little chance for somebody to see something. So like, yeah, if it's right by chance, but I'm not going to trust it. And if it's wrong, I told you so. I'm not going to use it. And it only takes one mistake for something for trust in AI to break, and that mistake happens or a lot of the times at the beginning of the process, and people just are uninterested afterwards.
You often talk about the organizational layer. What exactly does that mean, and why is it so critical?
Well, from my perspective, it's a combination of things, right? It's of course first people. No matter what we do, everything's around people. Like even coding is around people. People build the code, or now AI, but AI builds based on what people tell it to build. There's a lot of processes that usually have, or in theory should have, people ownership, but a lot of the times they don't. So like they run without any kind of ownership and accountability, and there's a lot of breakdown there. The systems that get involved, organizations are incredibly complex places with different information systems of record, of analytics. And of course, there's a lot of governance that a lot of the time is put there in order for to align all these different people, process, and systems. But it operates as a barrier. So I think these things need to be brought together, and then we can talk about data and information as well as measurement that can actually enhance the full picture. So in reality, every time you're trying to do anything related to AI or any technology initiative, it is very multidimensional what you're trying to orchestrate and align. And that's why there is this information gap, and that's why it is so many projects fail, because it's so hard to actually align everything, especially if you're trying to align them before you do them.
How do you think, Angel, companies should rethink leadership, governance, and decision making? And now we have this in an AI first world.
I think the information flow as well as the contextualization that AI can do so well needs to become part of all the decision making. And these are some of the places where AI does such a great job, is basically building context about the decision, what has happened in the past, going around the organizational knowledge system, putting that together and presenting presenting the contextualized view on what's happening. And basically, you can then enhance it with governance or compliance requirements from outside. And basically, you have this complete picture that leaders can make better decisions. So a lot of the time, the AI can do 90% of the orchestration work and alignment work that it need, like people, like teams of people needed to do. Now AI can do it, and this needs to be brought into the decision making process, and systems like the AI needs to be trained. So like agents need to know how to do this in order to do it well. So, but if these things are put together in a way that makes sense, decision making in a contextualized way for leaders will happen in a much yeah, with much better outcomes. I would say. I think outcome is the most important thing. So I think contextualization and using AI will get much better outcomes.
You know, I've been building empathetic and compassionate AI using the tokenization of goodness, right? Whatever goodness is defined, to create a trust layer. I'm concerned a bit about trust when deploying AI systems that influence business decisions, and also empathy and compassion. How do we go down through? How important do you think trust is, Angel, when you're deploying the AI systems um, today, and how important do you think it's going to be 5 years from now?
I think it may be the single biggest barrier to adoption or true adoption in the AI world, because these are, although they have improved, these are still non-deterministic systems, or the AI that's popular today is a very non-deterministic system. And if for the same output you get for the same input you get different outputs, people don't tend to trust the output, and if people don't tend to trust the output, then they won't adopt the output. So I think trust is critical in AI adoption and actually getting the value out of AI. And trust, I think, will be important in 5 years from now, because interacting with systems is as interacting with people. If you operate much better with people that you trust, and you trust when people are consistent, and the same needs to happen to an AI system. To get them trustworthy, I think, is beyond my level of understanding, and I think the science is not even there yet. And a lot of the times they are trustworthy, but it only takes one time for it not to be trustworthy, and basically you start to rework all over, like you start rebuilding that trust all over again.
What separates organizations that successfully scale AI from those that remain stuck in an experimentation mode?
What I've seen the most is that organizations that have a very good understanding of the problems that they're facing and how an AI system is going to fix that problem, and operate, like, don't go do 10 things, but do 3 to 5 things. They look from start to finish on how the processes change, do everything related to process change, do the whole transformation, do education, involve people at the start and at the finish, continue to train the people after the project has been done, and then basically improve the solution after it has been deployed. Those are the organizations that succeed. The ones that, like, try something, it works, maybe it even works the first time in production, but don't do all the other effort, right? All that people effort or transformation effort or organizational effort to get it into as many people's hands as possible, and make sure that those people understand what they're using. Those fail, right? Like, it doesn't really matter how good that thing is. Nobody sees it, or very few people see it.
How do you think companies should balance governance and innovation so they don't create this bureaucracy? I mean, concern is, places like Europe, right, where they're talking about these AI acts. I mean, on one side of it, we got a lot of challenges in humanity now. We got global warming. We got a population of 8.3 billion, go to 13 by the end of the century. We've got average temperatures around the world could be up 13 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. There's only so many dead animals and plants we can burn. Got to double the food supply by 2050. Got a lot of stuff out there. We need some superpower. But how do you think we balance governance and innovation so that they don't create the bureaucracy that slows it down and turns the company into a dinosaur?
I may say something very unpopular. I think governance has a bad rap, and basically the last few decades have made governance sound like the bad guy. But every time there are constraints on something, like people and systems become more innovative and actually produce better outcomes. So I think the way I think of governance is that it needs to be reinvented and applied differently into the innovation process. I guess a lot of the challenges with governance today is something similar to what I'm talking about with AI adoption, is that a lot of the times it's pushed top down without actually understanding the impact at the lowest level, at the atomic level in the system. I think governance should provide the guidelines in which things happen, and should be like precise enough for those guidelines to be respected and imposed upon the people or organizations that are doing them, but should happen bottom up, right? As long as they happen at the atomic level in the system, that system, like my view is that it will produce more innovation, and it can operate more seamlessly or faster than if that governance is imposed from the top down and then it gets disseminated. Because in all the governance initiatives, there's so many unintended consequences, and that's because you can never really see how something is going to unfold at the lowest level. So I think we need to figure out a better way of doing governance, maybe closer to the middle or bottom, and how it is disseminated into the system.
We're coming up to the top of the show, Angel. If you could give every CEO one piece of advice about moving from AI from pilot to production, what would it be?
Don't underestimate the cost and effort needed to get all the people on board and everybody trained in how to use it, and then improve the system in such a way that the people that use it trust it to use it as part of their daily routine.
Angel, one of the biggest takeaways from our conversation today is that AI transformation isn't just about deploying better models, it's about building organizations capable of embracing a fundamentally new way of working. The companies that solve the organizational layer may ultimately gain a better advantage than those that simply have access to the latest technologies. It's great having you on the show today. Closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Angel?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It has been such a great conversation. The best way to get in contact with me is visit the website or find me on LinkedIn. My website is aireadi.io with an I at the end, not a Y. And my LinkedIn is /Angel Horvat.
That's fantastic. If you want to stay for a few minutes after the show, we can talk. And all of the audience out there, thank you for joining one more time. GSD Presents Top Global Startups. We're now closing on 1,800 podcasts, and it's all because of each and every one of you. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thank you, Angel. And thanks, everybody.